So, I would like to hear your opinion on what remote working from home, looks like, should look like, feels like it should look like in 2023. 2019, we were not hybrid. We were full-time in the office. Then the March of 2020 is when COVID came around. And then following COVID, we're now hybrid with 2 days at home.
Yep, that's us.
But a lot of the bigger companies who I presume have quite a lot of real estate are trying to get people back into the office and even forcing people to do so.
Yeah. I mean, the forcing people to do so is its own thing to focus on and talk about. But, I mean, my question back to you is, how do you, when you read that these bigger companies, for example, in the media saying, there's stories about them forcing them back. I mean, on Twitter, didn't it go around about?
Yeah, but Elon's...
What's his name?
Elon's in charge, isn't he? So
he lost the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you immediately see that as, from a business owner's perspective? Do you read the sort of headlines as the bigger companies bringing people or forcing people back in? Do you see that as it's just a cost thing? Is that where immediately your mind as a business owner goes to? Or do you think culture? Or what's your step-by-step response? Because mine is cost, but I'm an employee rather than you as a business owner, so maybe we'd respond to it slightly differently, or at least the thought process would be slightly different. Mine's cost.
Cost is a factor, obviously. It comes into your overhead, you're paying for space, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah.
I've always advocated for in-person being more efficient. I think with all the will in the world of being 100% remote, and whilst the capability is there, I still think being in person is more productive.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to appreciate that people have lives outside of work and they need a bit of flexibility as well. So having the capability of working from home for a day, if you need to be in for someone to come and look at your broadband, or you're having a sofa delivered, or you need to nip to a dentist appointment, or I get that.
I think barriers and headaches have dropped because now exactly more trivial things that you've just mentioned there's a little bit of, I feel like you can get shit done a little bit easier now, like exactly like you've just said, go to the dentist, for example, bits and pieces like that now I feel like we're in the rhythm of remote working. I guess that's sort of the status quo now. Like I accept that headaches 4 years ago of when can I fit in a day, I'm going to come in late, all that sort of stuff. Like it's almost bizarre to think back to those times because there's proof in front of everyone that it is possible to be flexible and make things work. Interestingly, when you said, in my opinion, things face to face work better, you're speaking to someone who agrees with that, but there's many people, as we all know, who would challenge that straight away, wouldn't they? It's hard to say, like, in my opinion, and be able to force that upon a group of people because the opinions are going to be so different within that group. So an Elon Musk or whoever else at these big sort of corporations, I feel like there's a big element of being insensitive to that. It's like, I've got my opinion. I'm in a position to be able to put my opinion across and change things, put actions into place. But I don't know. You probably have to tread this line much more carefully than me. But just hearing you say, in my opinion, I agree with that. I have the same opinion, but I know just from reading shite on LinkedIn, for example, there's lots of debate around this. So how do you navigate that? How do you navigate having an opinion and believing that things are better face to face and having people on your side, but equally probably people who'll challenge you outright? As a business owner, do you just have to stick to your guns? and take. I know we're a different scale to Twitter,
a little bit.
But yeah, how do you navigate that? Do you stick to your guns? Do you have your opinion and appreciate that your opinion might not be universal?
Well, I think I would never forcibly put something in place, regardless of what it was. So, say on Monday, I came in and went, right, everybody's in 5 days a week. If you don't like it, you can go work elsewhere.
Yeah,
that'd be fucking stupid, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's from what I read how it was delivered by Elon, which is obviously just, you don't know what to believe, do you?
Exactly,
But, I think it comes down to, from an employer's standpoint, being a modern employer. You've got to understand your employees, and I think forcing people back to a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday would just be naive. That being said, I still advocate for face to face, and it's not a mistrust. It's a, I've seen it be more effective.
Yeah.
Because video, as good as it is, and it's much better now than it was 3-4 years ago, it's still difficult to get right. It still lacks context. And I think what a lot of people are forgetting, especially a lot of people that have never done office-based work, that have just come into the world of work out of uni, straight into fully remote, are completely missing the experience of having that social interaction and building relationships with people in a way which is at a species level.
Yeah.
We're social species. We need that social interaction, and it's naive to think that we can do without it. Video is not a replacement.
It's interesting, like, thinking about career paths, and this is probably veering off topic massively, but based on what you've just said there, some graduate comes out of uni straight into office life, which is sat at your home desk, just say 5 days a week, doing all your video stuff. I understand what I'm about to say here now is there's different career paths and different, all of us have done different things at our, in our day jobs, but just selfishly talking about what my career path is and has been, I can't imagine I'd be in the position I am now if I was straight out of uni. I'm going to say hid behind a computer. Obviously, we're behind computers, it doesn't matter where you are. We're sat at home 5 days a week. That's just me personally speaking. Again, it's my opinion, whatever. But I feel quite strongly about that. I've got no evidence because I've not gone down that route. But I feel like having the opportunity to experience both sides is maybe what's being missed from grads coming out. And it's not necessarily they've chosen that, it's almost been forced upon them that these are your sort of options, but at least there are options. So I think that, to me, there's an opportunity there to be able to maybe do some homework in, flexi working hybrid model like we've got, and you sort of get best of both worlds. Whereas right now, if you were a graduate, you could well fall into a 5 days a week just working from home, very, I would argue, lonely potentially. But I know that characteristics have to come into play, don't they, and personalities and whatnot. But I can only speak from my experience looking back now. If I restarted my career, came out of uni and was just doing 5 days a week, I mean, I don't even know if I'd continue doing something like what I do as well. It's so much harder. It's possible, but it's so much harder to just do it remotely. Videos, like building relationships is a big thing. What's the nature of that relationship from sort of day one if it's just virtual all the way through?
It's not possible. I think on a scale of where you're at when you're 21, 22, you don't have, unless you're exceptionally emotionally intelligent, I don't think you have the self-awareness or the maturity to really build a relationship that you can when you're face to face.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. Like, I wouldn't say I've got my little black book, and I don't necessarily think that sales works like that anymore. But what I do think is the relationships thing in sales. Again, just talking about what I do for a role, has always been about relationships. And therefore the sort of application of those and the building of those relationships. I am absolutely certain about it in my mind that the nature of those relationships would be different if they were just remote. I'm not saying that you can't build a relationship, but the sort of the value of that, or the weight of that relationship, I would think, is massively stripped back if all you've done is speak to that person and try to build that relationship virtually. I think I also think, thinking about, I'm just talking about sales there, internal relationships as well with your colleagues. So back to the sort of topic that we're talking about here. How do you get that culture from just a relationships with your colleagues perspective? How is that sort of possible if you were 100% remote? Would you just feel like a little bit of a collective of freelancers, a little bit more than bought into a company culture? I don't know.
I think it's possible, but it's very, very difficult and infinitely harder to do that because people can't feel it.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult. You have to over-index on comms, and then it becomes forced, and you walk a really fine line between it being disingenuous and it being real.
It's interesting with that over-indexing that I remember when shit hit the fan and we all had to shift to working from home for that in that immediate. And I remember you saying, we need to make sure that everything we're doing is over-indexing on that, because everything's sort of heightened, or the opposite, totally stripped back because of the nature of the tables being chucked upside down. That I felt like when we were going into that, no one knew the answers, but I sort of felt like this was temporary. It was only ever going to be temporary. And it's interesting to see people's reactions, like we're talking about today. People went hybrid when they could, and then why is there a sort of U-turn on that? And some people are talking about back into the office 5 days a week, or some have just gone sort of 100% remote and stuck by it. I always thought it was temporary, and fair play, we've landed on this in this hybrid model that we've got now, and you'll tell me otherwise, but I feel like it's working. I feel like it works well. I feel like the scheduling of everyone in on a certain day helps as well, with then the flexibility in the rest of the week. It's been interesting to watch when I thought it was just sort of not necessarily here to stay.
I think what it's done is it's brought to the surface poor employers.
Yeah.
Because the poor employers have been forced into a position that they wouldn't have found themselves in. Trusting your staff to the point that you feel like they're confidently delivering what they're there to do is just a hard thing for some businesses to grasp. That's why I think they're failing, or some businesses failed. Same as a recession. It's like the businesses that innovate and accept change and pivot a little bit, and they're the businesses that come out the other side of it. I think that there's definitely going back to the younger people that have only had experience of being remote. It definitely created certainly a solid 12-month period of, I'd describe it as almost an entitlement of, I want the most money I can get with the most benefits, with the...
Keep my costs down as well.
with fully 100% remote. Whether that's your model or not, they would still want to be 100% remote.
Yeah.
And that I've seen, certainly in the last 3 months, I would say, start to just pull back and become a little bit more realistic. The bubble of everything I want is going to be achieved. Otherwise, I'm going to find someone else that's going to offer me that and that's going to bend and flex to do that. That mentality is starting to shift slightly.
Why do you think it's shifting, in your opinion? Do you think it's just time? Time has passed and it's the natural evolution, if that's the right word?
Yeah, I think people are out and about more. I think we're starting to rediscover the benefits of being face to face and being in person. You can travel more when the trains are running. I think it's just a realization, and I think what's happening now as well is like if you put yourself back into the middle of COVID, the uncertainty, the perhaps panic, the from a company's side as well, like the panic of shit, if I don't adhere to the requests of these potential employees, I'm never going to be able to hire anyone again.
Yeah.
So what that meant was that the companies that did flex created a market where it was the employees market, and it created a little bit of a bubble. Salaries went through the roof. They got inflated. Resource became tight because there was just nobody around. And I think that's starting to disappear a little bit now. It's starting to sort of come back into real life. Same way that the housing market, for example, is doing that now.
Do you think that working life across all industries will ever look like it used to pre-pandemic, which was for the majority, the 5 days? I know there were hybrid models and whatever, but they were in the minority in my knowledge.
I don't think it should. I think it's it depends on the business and the capability of being able to operate effectively from every angle, from the employee's perspective, from the business's perspective. But I don't see any reason why a business with the capability to at least offer some remote work shouldn't.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't.
It just comes down to being a good employer. And I think what hasn't changed, certainly with Flaunt, was the trust element of it. Yeah. Like 2018, 2019, it's not like we didn't trust anyone that worked here then. It's just you've got to react to what's going on. And I think a lot of positives have come out of...
Yeah, I agree. I think what we've seen so far this year is we've done a lot of face-to-face meetings, I feel.
A hell of a lot, yeah.
And it's been nice, hasn't it? And you'd like to think whoever we're meeting with, clients, prospective clients, are feeling exactly the same. There was that time, wasn't there, when obviously it all happened and you didn't even know whether you could shake someone's hand.
Yeah.
For example, that was a bit of bit of an awkward time in a way, but I guess it's a part of the process of no one really knowing what the hell was still going on. Not that we do now necessarily, but it's just nice to have kick-started this year with a lot of a big cohort of face-to-face meetings, and everyone seems up for it and comfortable. So you can just crack on like sort of the last 3 years haven't happened, even though they well and truly have.
I think the best thing about the position that we're in now is that the reluctance and misplaced expectation is gone.
Yeah.
People are getting back to the point where it's becoming more normal now to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
Whereas it was the norm to not be face-to-face.
Yeah, you had to tread a bit carefully as well, didn't you? Sort of almost ask permission to see people.
Yeah. And I think the people that were reluctant to do the face-to-face are now realising that they ain't got as much weight by going. Yeah. Like the expectation is less in terms of, can we not do that online?
Yeah.
Can we not do a video? Because they know they ain't got quite as much weight behind that anymore.
No, it's good. It's change for good. #.
Business for good.
2 hashtags there.